message of the RNC was that this is leading to an increase in crime.
Well,
and I think it's really important that we talk about crime.
Have been very high profile about people. If they had not been in this country illegally,
this is my
people
point,
would still
right?
be alive.
Trying to make people think that crime is up when crime is down under Joe Biden and crime was up under Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how often that gets reported on this network. So if you're watching this at home, do yourself a favor and look up the data.
Well, we invite that.
Great. So if you look this up at home, you will know that crime went down under Biden and crime went up under Trump. And I think the violent crime, for sure. So I think the really important thing to ask is, why would America want to go back to the higher crime that we experienced under Donald Trump?
Okay, but they all vetted.
The idea that somebody hasn't been tested or vetted when they have been the vice president of the United States for nearly 4 years just doesn't make any sense. She is in obviously one of the most visible leadership roles in the country. And she's demonstrated both her effectiveness in that job and a vision for the country that Americans agree with. And that's the real reason I think she's going to win, is that most Americans already agree with her on the issues that they care about the most, that affect them the most, whether we're talking about choice and her stance on defending a woman's right to choose versus Donald Trump, who eliminated a right to choose in this country.
Well, he sent it back to the states, to be fair.
Let's be very clear. He is proud of the fact that
all right, I'm just going to pause that there because literally laughed out loud.
He demolished the national right to choose in this country, period.
But there are states that are figuring this out. I mean, there are some that are, it's nearly impossible, a 6-week ban or less. But there are others, there are states in this country that allow no restrictions up until the due date of a child.
There was a national right to choose in this country, law of the land, for 50 years, which the vast majority of Americans believed was the right thing to do. But Donald Trump made a promise when he was a candidate, one of the few promises he actually kept, by the way. He didn't keep his promise of 6% economic growth. He didn't keep his promise to drain the swamp.
He did have a pandemic to deal with.
But even before the pandemic, America went into a manufacturing recession, which really hurt places like where I come from in the industrial Midwest. But anyway, my point is, he broke his promise for that kind of economic growth. He broke his promise to pass an infrastructure bill, right? He said he would do that. He failed to do it. The Biden-Harris administration got it done. He even broke his promise to that January 6th mob when he said, I will be at your side when you march down to the Capitol. But he actually did keep 2 promises. He kept his promise to destroy the right to choose in this country, and he kept his promise on tax cuts for the rich. And if you want to know what a second Trump term would be like, I would start by looking at those rare promises that he actually managed to keep.
He did say that he wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade, but again, send it to the states where they are hashing this out
empower the states to eliminate women's access to abortion. And also, as you know, the Republican Party continues to be interested in a national abortion ban.
Which he's disavowed completely.
Yeah, he's disavowed a lot of things. I don't believe him.
Well, voters have said that they are much less worried about the mental acuity and the physical strength of President Trump. They see
compared to Biden or compared to Harris? I'm pretty sure voters are worried about the age and acuity of President Trump compared to Kamala Harris, who represents being a generation younger. And how could anybody not watch the stuff he's saying, the rambling on the trail, and not be just a little bit concerned?
Well, that is certainly one of her talking points, and one of yours now as her campaign too.
And something most Americans believe.
Well, but most Americans didn't have a worry about him the way that they did about President Biden.
Americans are worried about him in lots of ways, and he's not running against President Biden anymore. You can tell he desperately wants to be, but he's not.
We do have new polls. Okay, so let's talk about this because you
handles it.
Why they didn't move forward? They moved forward because Donald Trump swooped in. He said, "I don't want Joe Biden to get a win."
Many of them that it was a flawed piece of legislation that had too many loopholes and other things they couldn't support. This is how Washington Post.
What happened.
This is how they described the border situation. Illegal border crossing soared in the months after Biden took office and immediately rolled back many Trump-era restrictions. They go on to say the number of people taken into custody by the U.S. Border Patrol has reached the highest levels in the agency's 100-year history under Biden, averaging 2 million per year. And there's a lot of that attributed to the fact that there were dozens of things done under the Trump administration that this administration rolled back. And Vice President Harris is part of this administration and had a leading role, according to mainstream media, on handling the border.
Let's get real. Border crossings are down in the wake of President Biden's executive actions that he took after Congress failed to act.
So he could have taken action.
He wanted Congress to resolve that because that would have been more durable. But when Trump came...
Also, that is what Trump wanted, just for the record. Trump in 2017 or 2018, tweeted that this is something that Congress can do. An executive order doesn't work. So,
talked Republicans out of their own bipartisan project because he didn't want the issue to get better. Remember, the worse things are at the border, the better things get for Donald Trump. So he has a vested interest in it remaining chaotic down there. I think this also helps to explain why he didn't exactly conclusively solve it when it was his turn. But I saw something else really important happening at the Republican National Convention on the border and the talk about immigration, which we all recognize is a problem, which is they tried to paint this narrative that if you live somewhere far from the border and immigration hasn't affected you personally, you need to think that immigration is a driver of crime. That was the real message. Immigration leads to crime.
Well, there are blue state governors and mayors who say every state is a border state now. That's Democrats.
Yeah, and now they're saying, but what the false message of the RNC was that this is leading to an increase in crime.
Well,
and I think it's really important that we talk about crime.
Have been very high profile about people. If they had not been in this country
cases,
illegally,
this is my
people
point,
would still
right?
be alive.
Trying to make people think that crime is up when crime is down under Joe Biden and crime was up under Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how often that gets reported on this network. So if you're watching this at home, do yourself a favor and look up the data.
Well, we invite that.
Great. So if you look this up at home, you will know that crime went down under Biden and crime went up under Trump. And I think the violent crime, for sure. So I think the really important thing to ask is, why would America want to go back to the higher crime that we